Welcome to this breakout session. We're going to talk about communicating with our kids. And by way of introduction, you have access to my bio, but I just wanted to say that my job is to direct a dialogue program. I help people who see things very differently from each other and who come from very different life experiences and theological convictions come together to dialogue across deep difference. And our tagline is, we pursue unity that is deeper than agreement. So that's my job. My life is that I'm a mom. I have 3 sons, 20, 24, and 27. And as a parent, I'm with you here today. I bring all my mom genes and my mom trauma as well. And I just wanted to say that in addition to many wonderful things that my family has brought me, parenting has included for me addiction, truancy, dropping out of school, depression, suicidality, estrangement, illegal activity, eviction, deception, rejection. So although I do not have any gay children or queer kids, at least not yet, none of my kids has come out to me as queer. I don't anticipate that happening. But suffice it to say that the family that I have and the family life that I've experienced does not look like the family that I thought I would have. You know, when I started out 27 years ago with our first kid, and I just thought it was going to look one way, and God had other plans. And I don't think I have any regrets that God had other plans, but I think that most of us can relate, right? We don't have the family that we like to show on Facebook often. that one day that you get everybody to pose, you know, no one's giving the flipping the bird, or no one's grimacing or whatever, and you put that up. That's like the equivalent of the Christmas family letter, right? And you like wish that was your family, but we all know that our families are complicated and difficult. And honestly, for me, it's the crucible that has led to any spiritual maturity that I may have has come to me through my family. At least that's the way it feels. So, and I have to say too, that the family that I grew up in and the way my parents raised me did not necessarily equip me for raising my children. Every generation, although some things stay the same, every generation we have new challenges, right? The culture changes. So the things that I thought were no-brainers, I mean, never in a million years would I have ever occurred to me to use the F word when talking to my parent. And that is just like, I mean, if your kid doesn't say it, you know, hallelujah. But I mean, that's sort of like a regular vocabulary word for me. So it's just the things that we have to adjust to. So sometimes or often, even if we've had amazing family lives growing up, we're not equipped for everything we're going to encounter. So I want to say I'm not a therapist, but I do have 10 hard-won years of family therapy under my belt, individual therapy and marriage therapy. So I've had lots of opportunities to learn and to practice some of the things that I'm going to share with you today. True, loving, open dialogue is hard with anybody, right? But it's more difficult with our children because we bring our patterns, often with patterns that we are not aware of, blind spots, and just some challenges, right? We have so much at stake with our kids. And also, you can't just walk up to anybody like at the bus stop and say, hey, we're going to dialogue, right? You need a willing partner. You can't dialogue to your child's back. They can't dialogue with your back. So the goal of this session is to help us learn about some of the things that help us turn towards our children and help them turn towards us as well. Then dialogue can take place, and only then. And you might be in a state where I've been with my youngest for a couple of years, where I'm just waiting for that back to turn, for that face to turn around. So I said during the Parent Connect meeting that, you know, although my job is dialogue, we're all parents together, right? So we're going to brainstorm together. We all bring wisdom to this conversation, and I have as much to learn from you as you do from me. So just to give you a framework, I'm going to share some assumptions that I'm bringing to this, some core understandings. I'm going to share some habits of the heart. Those are values that we can cultivate, and spiritual practices we can cultivate that help us come to dialogue in a more healthy way. I want to talk about some interpersonal dynamics, some of which are specific to parents, some of which are just generally true. And then I want to talk about some best practices for dialogue with a special focus on questions, because I think that when we ask a good question, we're off to a good start. And if you guys have any questions along the way, I'm going to ask you to put them in the chat bar. And at a certain point, we're going to go into little breakout rooms to do some small group brainstorming. And while you guys are in that, those breakout rooms, I'll look at some of the questions that you've submitted. Okay, so let's get started. I think I can just advance my slide here. There we go. So maybe these are obvious, maybe not, but my first assumption is that we love our kids and want to be in relationship with them. That's why you're here, right? And this one, the second one was not as evident to me for many years of my parenting, that our kids love us and want to be known and understood by us. And I've worked with hundreds of queer people and of all ages, and without exception, they have told me that they really long to be known and understood and loved by their parents. Some of them have experienced that, and some of them are still waiting for it, like even in their 60s. But it is a longing, and I think it's just built into the way that our hearts are wired for relationship. And parents are always going to hold an important and powerful role in our lives. And the last one is that healthy relationships do not require agreement. They only require mutual respect. And we'll talk about respect a little later too, but I just want to say that you can show your child respect. You can show your child respect without respecting or agreeing with, or to use a church word, condoning their beliefs or actions, right? You can respect a person without respecting or agreeing with their actions. Okay. So some of the habits of the heart that I was talking about, I think the very first one is that we have to learn to let go of our children. I think that starts when puberty hits. We start on that rough road of our children separating from us, right? That cuddly kid who hung on every word or who held our hand while we walked down the street starts to withdraw, change. Now, not every kid has the same journey, but it's actually part of their developmental work to let go of us, to learn to become their own people. And I think a lot of times we struggle with that more than they do. Our kids are not ours. And if we have time at the end, I want to play you that song. I don't know if you want to know that, but, and I think it's excruciating to let go of our children sometimes. And sometimes we don't even know what that means or how to do it. But the only thing we have any control over is ourselves. And that is where the hard work comes in on our own. We have to take on our own spiritual and emotional maturity. Like, we're trying to raise these kids, but there are parts of us inside that are broken and wounded and immature, and that we need to work on that, right? And one of the greatest gifts I think you can give your children is to be in a therapeutic relationship with a professional. I'm a huge evangelist for therapy. I just think everybody needs it. We all go to the dentist, right? Sometimes you go to the podiatrist, we get our haircuts, right? Our hair is cut, but we need to be an ongoing growth and healing process for our own spiritual and emotional maturity. It is the greatest gift you can give your kid, is to be modeling lifelong learning and healing. And we also need to have our own support structure. We need to have peers. If you have a spouse, a supportive spouse, that's awesome. Friends, and that can be really hard to find. People who are sort of on the same road, have the same level of commitment that you do for growth, but it really helps. Doing our own work means being aware of our own expectations and feelings. It means processing our grief. It means owning our own stuff, right? We bring things to the relationship with our children, and we have to own what's ours and take responsibility for what's ours and be clear on what's ours and what's theirs. Because a mature parent can absorb so much. We can absorb the anger of our children, the acting out, right? Even the disrespect that they might show us. I'm not talking about taking abuse, but we can handle that kind of conflict. We're not undone by it when we are more mature. Our children's strong emotions, their poor decisions. And we can also exercise humility. And we can ask for forgiveness, right? Which I think is more powerful than saying, I'm sorry. Quite frankly, I think it's much more powerful to say, I did this, I acknowledge it, I don't feel good about that. Can you forgive me, or will you forgive me? And also the gift of a redo. And this is a simple thing that I have just used so much. And that's basically that when I do something, when I have an interaction with my kid that's really not my best self, really painful, I usually know it immediately. And sometimes I have the wherewithal to ask right away for a redo. And that just looks like saying, oh, I did not handle that well. Can we do that again? And apparently psychologists have told me that it's more powerful to do a redo than to just say, I'm sorry, I wish I had done it this way. Because when we do it again, we actually have a muscle memory of it going well, of doing it, having done it, instead of saying, oh, I wish, sort of regretful, or I should have. You've done it. You've walked through it. And I have to say that I have asked for many redos in my life, and I have never been refused a redo. So you don't have anything to lose, right? And as the adult in these relationships, or the older person, maybe your children are adults as well, we have the option of modeling vulnerability. And, vulnerability by its very nature is hard and awful. It feels awful because we are vulnerable, right? But when we model vulnerability, we are giving our kids the gift of saying, you can too, honey, it's safe here to do that. And lastly, patience. Parenting is a lifelong job. You will be a parent probably until you die. And when I think of all the things I've learned since my parents passed away that they never saw, that helps me, but it also is hard for me to think like, oh my gosh, there are many of my prayers for my children will be answered after I'm gone. And I have to be okay with that, because I'm okay with maturing while my parents are gone, right? I'm grateful for the maturity that I've gained over the last 10 years. So taking the long view. And of course, who's more patient than our heavenly parent, right? All day long, God is constantly waiting us to turn back to God, to remember that God is there, to reconnect. Patient. We have a great role model in that. Some of the interpersonal dynamics that make dialogue with our children more possible are simple things like eye contact, warm eyes, which is a phrase that Karen Purvis uses. If you ever are interested, trust-based relational intervention. Trust-based relational intervention is a very powerful model for helping parents deal with their children that has really helped me a lot. Even though my kids were all grown when I came to it, or almost grown, it's all based on attachment theory. And you can build secure attachment even when your kid's 20, 25. You can still build secure attachment even if you did not have it. You were not securely attached to your child when they were little. So, and another thing in that attachment stuff is mirroring. So if your child is sitting down, sit down as well when you're talking with them. If your child is in a huddle on the floor, get down on the floor next to your child. If your child is standing, stand and meet their gaze. So there's something very hospitable about mirroring them. Now, if your kid is throwing a brick through a window, don't mirror that. But I'm just talking about when your child is communicating with you, try to mirror their behavior. This is harder for some of us than others, but just being okay with silence. You might not ever be comfortable with the silence when you're trying to like, oh, let's sit down and have a heart to heart, or let's talk about this. There must be silence. You might only learn to tolerate it, but hopefully you'll eventually become comfortable with it because you'll trust that something good is happening even in the silence. And then I think this is also a great opportunity we have as parents, is modeling a willingness to lean into conflict, right? We can reframe conflict as a good thing because it's there, right? It's there whether we acknowledge it or not. So strong emotions expressed, of course, anger, truth, hard truths, right? That's all there because we love each other. Think about the opposite of conflict. That's disengagement, denial, okay, which is another way of saying you're lying. You're pretending something isn't there. Detachment, what's the word? Indifference. We do not want to communicate that to our kids, all right? So conflict, we have the opportunity to reframe conflict as a positive thing. Let's see, where am I here? An awareness of our own feelings. I mean, it's not, some of us are super emotionally aware, but some of us just aren't. We don't realize until later what we brought to a conversation. So I'm a big one on preparation. If you have to have a hard conversation with your kid, prepare yourself. Prepare through prayer. Think about, wait, what am I carrying into this? Because we all know that conversations we rush into with our, with our anger at the forefront, or our fear, which, that's me, I'm fear. They don't go well, right? So take some time to think, ooh, what am I bringing into this conversation? And power dynamics. I think it's so hard because often as parents, we feel powerless. We feel like, oh my gosh, this kid is, my baby is 6'10", so maybe that's a little extreme, right? But I have these 3 gigantic boys. I do not feel powerful in their presence, okay? And even when they were shorter than me, when they were acting out, I didn't feel especially powerful, even though I'm 6'1". So I'm a big lady too, right? But emotionally, even emotionally, right? We feel so strung out sometimes, so exhausted. And our kids know all those buttons to push. And we feel powerless, but we forget that as a parent figure, we are incredibly powerful. We have the power to curse or bless our children. And the wounds or the blessings that we put on them, the curses or the blessings that we put on them, we all know, we remember those horrible things that our parents said to us, or the day that our parents sent us out with their hand on our forehead and said, bless you, I bless your marriage, I bless, those are powerful words. So we need to remember. And just a quick shout out, and maybe this will come up in some of the conversation, but there are also some cultural dynamics at play. So depending on sometimes either your ethnic culture or a generational thing. So I think this is both in my example, but my husband's from France. So we have both an international marriage and a transnational marriage. And then his parents are from a different generation, right? So there were times when I was raising parenting my children in front of them, and they were so shocked by how my children spoke to me. And then I realized, well, I've raised my children to express themselves, right? And so that can be a real, you can have a lot of cultural clash there. And if you are sort of old school and you were raised at your children should, answer you respectfully, that can be really shocking when you also want them to be really articulate and share their feelings and talk to you openly and honestly, but it can be shocking when it comes with an F-bomb or it comes with a threatening face, right? So just being aware of power dynamics and power in your particular culture. What was it like? How were you raised? What is the power, the understanding of power that you're bringing into this context with your kids? And that's something you could talk to them about as well. And then we have to talk about our developmental goals for our children, right? On the one hand, you have fusion, the kid who never leaves home, right? The parents who say, oh, Susie's my best friend. We tell each other everything. Okay, that is one kind of relationship, right? But often those relationships represent some kind of fusion where the kid never really moved on. And then on the other side, you have rejection, the kid who never talks to his parents, or the kid who just sets out to do everything the opposite of what his parent raised him or her to do, right? Neither of those are freedom, right? Freedom is when the child developmentally progresses and decides for him or herself or themselves, this is what's important to me. These are the values that you raised me in that I'm keeping. These are the values that you raised me in that don't resonate with me. So I'm jettisoning this, I'm keeping this, I'm integrating this. That's a truly free adult, is somebody who's been able to grow up and out of his parents' home in a healthy way like that. And I hope that makes sense, but okay. Oh wait, I thought I had one more there. Maybe it's just on my notes. And interpersonal dynamics, yeah, one more. I forgot to write it there, but somebody from the Center for Courage and Renewal has this great phrase, and it's, when in doubt, turn to wonder. I like to say, when triggered, turn to wonder. And that just means cultivating this sense of curiosity. Oh my gosh, I am so triggered. I feel so angry or so resentful or so hurt. And instead of acting out of that initially, right, just turn to wonder and say, why am I feeling so hurt? Why am I feeling so triggered? Before you go into a conversation. So again, that's that idea of preparation. And then lastly, dialogue best practices. So think about what is your hope for these conversations, for your interactions with your children. If your hope is to coerce them into being the kind of person you want them to be, that's not dialogue. Even convince, it's not really dialogue. And certainly, if the focus is on ourselves, if it's more important for you to be understood than to understand them, then that's also not dialogue. Of course, we want to be understood as well, but you have to be focused on trying to understand our kid. So be clear about what you're really after here. And this is one harkening back to the idea of doing our own work. I feel like the best thing we can do is model the kind of adult, the kind of person that we hope our child will be. And then they will or won't be that kind of person. They're going to be their own person either way, right? But if we focus on being the more mature person, that's the best we can offer our kids, right? So be clear on your goals and your hopes, and start with affirmation. There's always something to affirm. Now, this can be really tricky, but in my experience, there's always something to affirm. So even when people are screaming at each other, right? My sister does this in-home therapy, and she's walked into homes where people are nose to nose, and they are really railing on each other. And I would be like, I said, Robin, how, that's horrible. How do you deal with that situation? And she says, I say to them, here are people who really care about each other. They really are passionate about their relationship. And that usually stuns them into silence. And then she said, yeah, because if you didn't care, you wouldn't be arguing. You'd be in separate ends of the house. You'd be hitting the high road. No, you're together. You're in this house. You're trying to communicate. So that's an extreme situation, but there is always something to affirm. You just have to think creatively. And we're going to do a little exercise with that later. Listen more and talk less. That's kind of a no-brainer, but I just learned that there's something called the dilution principle in psychology. The more we talk, the less we're heard. So I should probably stop talking now because I feel like I've been talking a lot. But this is what I'm here for, right? But yeah, I just thought, ooh, that's really powerful. The more information we give people, the less they actually hear. I already mentioned that you have to make sure you have support elsewhere. And don't process your feelings with your kids. That was a big mistake I made. I thought, oh, well, they're adults now, they're big people. And it took me so long to realize that, no, that's what my husband's here for. That's what my best friend is here for. That's what my therapist is for. Do not process my feelings with my kids because of that power thing. And it's really not their job. It's not their job. And I'm not saying that you don't ever tell your kid, I'm sad or I'm upset. Of course not. But in the moment as you're working through some of these things, they're not the people to process with, especially if your feelings are about them. Be curious. We talked about this, cultivating true curiosity. I think if I had to identify one thing that most people struggle with, it's how to be genuinely curious and non-defensive. How to use that curiosity to craft an open-ended, non-leading question. So, does everybody know who Krista Tippett is? She's that host on Being, right? Well, I actually got to interview her a number of years ago, and it was great. And she said this to me: a good question is a gift, and it always stuck with me because it is. A good question taps into your imagination. It makes you feel seen. It makes you feel cared for. It opens possibilities that you didn't know were there. It is just such a gift, and it's such a simple thing, and it's free if we're willing to cultivate the skill of doing that. Now, I shared I shared a handout on the, hold on, let's see, how do I get rid of this for a moment? But I'm gonna guess that most people didn't download it or anything. It's on the thing. So this is the handout. And I just wanna go over a couple of these. You see this? Is it big enough to see?
We're still seeing your slideshow.
Oh, you are? Okay, you know what? I need to change my, thank you for letting me know. I'm gonna stop the share.
There you go.
And then I'm gonna share just my screen there. Okay, now do you see that chart?
Now we see it.
Great.
Can you make it, can you by any chance make it a little bit bigger?
Yep, let's do that. Does that work?
That's better.
Okay, you know what? I think I can do it even more here. There we go. So I have two sets of questions. Some are sexuality and gender examples, and some are life choices, right? So well, let's do a little mix, but I tried to sort of demonstrate what a good question does and what a bad question does, and also to give some examples. And I have to say that all of these bad questions and some of the good questions I got from queer kids who told me that their parents said these things, right? So I'm not exaggerating, right? When some of these questions are really hard. And also just a reminder that these are not prescriptive or one size fits all, right? The goal is relationship, and we're looking for connection. So that's why these are not about behavior management. These are about connecting. So for example, a good question expresses genuine interest in the other. Like, what does it mean to you to be queer? That really allows the child to open up and explore things, right? Rather than focusing on oneself or articulating one's own views or theories. Where did I go wrong? Is a focus on oneself, right? Is it because you were raped? Proposing a theory that may or not be your child's case at all and may not have anything to do with your child is what I mean, but also like kind of downloads some faulty information. So we want questions that are not Trojan horses that sort of smuggle in our opinions. We want questions that provoke reflection and really getting to know our children, right? So another example, a good question is prepared to hear hard answers. How have we helped or harmed you in your journey? A good question invites openness. What kept you from coming to us with this sooner? How might we make it easier for you to come to us in the future? As opposed to triggering defensiveness. Why didn't you tell us sooner? You'll notice that a lot of why questions often sound like accusations. A good question is a doorway to deeper intimacy. What do you need most from us right now? Simply that, rather than simply gathering information. A good question reflects the level of the relationship. It's aligned with the trust that's been earned. So maybe being a little more reticent, right? What would you like me to know about your relationships? Giving all the child the agency, right? Instead of busting boundaries, asking inappropriate or unnecessary questions. I'm wondering if I can, not sure how we can, because I would love for you guys to have this with you when you do the breakout rooms. Anyway, I'll just continue going through a little bit more, but a good question is open-ended, like how has your faith changed since you came out? A good question reflects the power you hold as a parent, like how would you like us to treat this information you're sharing? A good question allows for a range of answers instead of giving a prescribed list. Was it this or that? What relationships do you feel good about in your life right now? A good question considers where your child is in their process, right? I've heard some parents in their attempt to be affirming of their child's relationship, I've heard parents say, "When's the wedding?" And the kid hasn't, there's no engagement, you know, like, or can I play piano at your wedding? It's so well-meaning, but it's rushing way ahead. So just taking a deep breath and trying to consider where your child is in this process. I can't see your faces anymore. So can somebody just say if you still hear me and
We can hear you, Kristen.
Yeah.
okay,
You're all good.
okay, thanks. I'm just gonna go through the rest and then we're gonna go back on screen. So so again, remembering that your goal is for your child to develop and to mature their own thinking processes. Compliance and rebellion, as I mentioned before, I said fusion and rebellion, but compliance and rebellion both reflect the absence of mature thinking. If they come to a decision thoughtfully, even if you don't agree with the outcome of that thought process, that is growth. They'll learn from the fruit of their decisions, not from being told what you think about their decisions. And good questions go a long way in helping them develop their thinking processes. So a good question acknowledges different experiences and cultural meanings. A good question shows curiosity. So for example, this is about alcohol consumption. When I was growing up, I associated alcohol consumption with negative coping strategies and relational violence. These are painful associations that remain with me to this day. So you're sharing some of your own where you came from, but you grew up in a different household and time. I'd love to hear what alcohol means to you. It's actually not a question with a question mark, but it is, it's an invitation. You see the difference between that and if we said to our kid, "Why do you drink so much?" She certainly didn't learn that from growing up in our house. And that's actually a direct quote from yours truly. I've said that to my kid. So I'm hoping that you can see how the green is opening and invitational and how the orange is like, not the best way. A good question acknowledges the other's agency and respects that they have their own thought processes, right? They came to their decisions because they came to their decisions. They had some kind of a thought process. It might have been an immature one, but they did. So we'd like to hear some of your concerns or values. It's really another way of saying fears or hopes regarding dealing with a pandemic. When's a good time for us to discuss this? So you're sharing that you have a concern, you're inviting theirs to hear theirs, and you're arranging for a time. So that's so respectful. And I've heard that there are some families that are really struggling with differences of opinion about how to handle pandemic. A good question before proceeding sometimes takes the opportunity to set a healthy boundary. So of course, you're a person with your own feelings and ideas, and you don't have to erase that in order to talk to your child. You can share that. And this depends on age appropriateness, of course, but one example would be, because marriage vows or sobriety or my belief that relationships should be based on tenderness is so important to me, I don't feel good about your current relationship with fill in the blank, right? A married person, a person struggling with addiction, etc. What is that like for you that I don't feel good about this? So you're sharing your thoughts, but you're also asking them, you're acknowledging that that's going to make them feel some kind of way, and you're genuinely interested in hearing. Also, again, this start with affirmation. A good question focuses on strengths and positives. I deeply appreciate your desire to be open with me about your relationships. Thank you for your honesty. I'm not able to celebrate your relationship with X for the reasons we've discussed. In light of that, what do you most need from me? So that's two adults, right? You're taking responsibility for your feelings, but you're saying, what do you need from me? Because you can't give your approval. That would be dishonest. And this scenario sort of intimates that the child is sort of asking for that, sharing openly about his or her relationship or their relationship. So you're being your full self, you're bringing your full self to the table, but you're also saying, what do you need from me? It's expressed in loving kindness in the midst of disagreement, which is possible. And lastly, a good question does not ignore or avoid conflict, but allows the other the choice to move towards it. So I have some thoughts about this choice you're making. Would you be interested in hearing them? And if so, when would be a good time? Again, this focus on agency. So I'm going to stop sharing and see your beautiful faces again. All right. Nathaniel?
I am here.
Thanks. What did we decide about the scenarios? How was I going to share that with them? Oh, we were just going to test it and see if it worked in the chat box.
Yes.
Okay. So Nathaniel's going to split you into groups of 3 or 4. And we're going to take about 10 minutes. And I want you to look at 3 different scenarios. They're just invented scenarios about conflicts between that parents have with their children. And it asks 3 questions. The first one is, what can you affirm in this situation? No, sorry, what are your feelings? What are the feelings that you're bringing to the situation? What can you affirm here? And what are some good questions? Given some of the guidelines that I just shared with you, what are some good questions that would start a conversation? This is not about resolving the situation necessarily. Some situations never reach closure, right? Think of your own relationships with your parents, right? Not everything comes to closure, and that shouldn't always be our goal, although sometimes there are practical things that we do have to make decisions about. But so those are the 3 questions, and let's see, I'm going to copy this into the chat bar. That's just the moderator. Can I do everyone? Sorry. I'm having trouble pasting. Oh, I can share a file. Sorry, should have done this before. Dropbox, Google Drive, Dropbox. Let's see if this works here. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Sorry, folks. And if I can share both that and the I'm sorry.
Kristen, you should be able to upload straight from your computer into the.
It gives me Dropbox, Microsoft OneDrive, Google Drive Box, and Microsoft SharePoint, but it's not giving me a. This is another way. Oh, shoot. Not sure why you can't paste into that. All right, you know what? I'm going to leave up my PowerPoint. I have them in the PowerPoint. Let's see if we can share it that way. Sorry, share screen. Share. Okay, so here's the first one. Oh, this is not ideal. So y'all can see that, but can you see each other?
I think this is going to work great, Kristen. Let's try this.
Okay.
We have a small enough group here too.
Oh, do you want to just do it together instead of splitting into smaller groups? Maybe we could do that. There's only, what, 17 of us? 17 of you?
Let's try it.
Okay. All right. Let's do it. So the first one is, and also I have a link here to this wonderful little feelings chart, which I am going to share with you. I think this is awesome because some of us have more trouble articulating our feelings. So this is a chart that sort of divides it into bad, good, bad, happy, surprised, fearful, angry, disgusted, sad, okay? And then all the different variations and nuances. So I think that's super helpful. So I might just leave that small on the side. Oops. Probably too small to see, but all right. So conflict scenarios. For cost saving reasons, your young adults, I'll just leave it up there. That's the first one. Why don't we just read through that quietly and then start to talk about what feelings might you bring to this situation?
Gosh, this is one that hits home for me because
Go ahead, Janine.
oh, okay. My daughter Grace wanted to buy a brand new phone, and she said, "Mom, I'll make payments, and I'll just give you monthly payments." Well, she's going through this whole trying to figure out becoming gay and going through depression and suicidal thoughts, and we're dealing with all of that. And I noticed, so she has some great weeks and some she doesn't, but I noticed that she's not making those regular payments. And I told my husband, like, I don't want to burden this kid with this, yet my 23-year-old is watching going, okay, so she's just getting a free phone, you know, so.
And how old is your daughter who's having trouble making the payments?
19.
Okay.
But she's just, you know, when you see your kids struggling with all these bigger issues, I would love to hear from parents, you know, how to, I'm scared to do any, to impart any more hardship on this kid. She's dealing with so much.
Okay, so
But is that helping her? That's not helping her be a human being and learn how to make a payment.
well, let's start with the first question there. What feelings does this situation engender in you? What do you?
That it's not fair to my 23-year-old.
Okay, so it's like a justice issue.
Yes, and I'm not helping her as a mom. You know, you still have to exist in the world and have to know how to make payments. And I know why you're dealing with your sexual identity, but it's also the real world, so.
What do other people think?
Well, I think I'm in a situation like this. My reason is a 22-year-old transgender, male to female, just came out 3 months ago, lives in an apartment, but just about a mile away. I make the car payment for her and the phone is under my plan. And she's to pay me every month on the 15th, the amount that would cover the car payment and the phone. And every month, it's about the 17th or the 18th where I have to say, I didn't get your payment yet. And by then I've already written the check for the car payment. And so I think that what comes out is a feeling of disappointment because she's 22 and I raised her. And I feel like she should know by now that this is part of being a responsible young adult. And so the conversation is usually, what I did last month was simply just said, what can I do to help you remember this? You know, do you need to put a reminder in your phone? Do you need to, you know, like, because it's making me feel disrespected.
Okay.
But
And-
Melanie, do you feel like she's too, do you ever feel like that your kid's too fragile to even bring this up right now? Or do those questions ever come to
Well,
mind?
no, not really. And so I get where you're coming from, you know, because you are seeing a fragile situation and so you're afraid to rock the boat. But I think it's okay for you to say that, for you to admit that to her and say, look, I know things are really difficult right now. This is an agreement that we came to. It's making me feel like we're not important to you, for you to not be making these payments. Is it something you can't do? And if so, what can we do to alleviate that situation? You know, if you can't afford a phone right now, then maybe a flip phone would have to do for a while, or, you know, like, God forbid you mention a flip phone to a teenager, but, you know, I think it's just a matter of asking some of those probing questions to say, look, we have a situation here that isn't working out very well. and let's talk about this. Let's do it respectfully, and let's figure out how we can best approach this situation. But I do think that perhaps part of her own self-healing can be having a sense of responsibility. And so maybe helping her figure out a way to set that up so that it's being done responsibly can be an empowering thing. You know, it's kind of like, if you can't do anything else, make your bed in the morning, you know? So maybe that there could be a sense of giving her some, a sense of that sense of responsibility.
That's great. This is some really great thoughts. I love, Melanie, you just jumped straight to problem solving. Which is great. You had lots of really good thoughts. I just can we dwell for just a few minutes in the feelings? Like, instead of jumping straight to problem solving, what are we feeling? So I heard, it's not fair, disappointment. I heard maybe a little guilt, like I don't want to, like, or responsibility for how she's like going.
The feeling is walking on tiptoes through each and every situation.
Each and
That's-
every situation. All right, because
Because she's-
you fear her fragility. You fear for her.
Yes.
Okay, so
Mhm.
fear.
Yeah.
What other feelings?
I heard anxiety. Anxiety. I think in my own situation, in similar.
Linda, you froze. We lost Linda.
I know.
Come back, Linda. All right, well, hopefully she'll come back. What about other people? What?
I heard someone mention disrespect, and I would feel that too, like I'm being taken advantage of.
Right, so maybe that's linked to like resentment, right? When we feel disrespect, like, oh, someone's using me. Anything else come to people's minds? Okay, but we have some really hard feelings there, right? And
Ruth has something she wants to
oh,
share.
sorry. Yes, Ruth.
Maybe they feel like there's some kind of struggle and imbalance between, you know, the parent and child relationship, and maybe that child hasn't had any independence yet.
That's a great point, Ruth. How many other opportunities have we given that kid to develop a sense of responsibility and independence, right? So of course, every situation is going to be different, right? You have to look at some of those different factors. If this is the first time you're giving your child this kind of responsibility, you might need to be thinking about, that would be a great way to start the conversation about responsibility. This is what responsibility looks like. But if the kid's been living independently for a while, like in this scenario, the kid's 24, has a job, lives, you know, I don't know if I said lived independently or something, but it's just, I just really want to point out that it's really helpful for you to think about the feelings that are engendered in you before you start. Now let's go to the second one. What can you affirm here in this situation? This is where you have to get creative.
Hey, even
Can you
though
throw can you throw the slide back up for just while you're talking?
Oh, sure. When I do that, I can't see anybody though. It's weird, but okay. Oh, there it goes.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, even though in this incident that the child is not being independent, I think that we can still affirm that their desire is to be independent, because that can lead you to talking about how, you know, following through with paying is a way of you getting more independent and gaining that more.
Exactly. Right. We can say it's really great that you want to save money is another thing, right? You really want to save money because you did the research and you found out that it's $50 or $60 to have your own line, right? And it's $35 with us. So we could affirm that. We could affirm their desire for independence. Okay. And then not jumping to solution yet. Not jumping to solution. Hold hold the reins on that parent fix kind of impulse that we often struggle with. What question could we ask that would launch a conversation with this kid? It would invite him in, not make him feel attacked, not make him feel like you've already got the answer to the problem, but that's going to get him thinking, using his his thinking process.
Every question that comes into my mind, I can just hearing my children getting immediately defensive, no matter how I word it. Just
Okay, what is it, Laura? And then let's
Yeah.
break that down.
like what are your thoughts on this situation? Like, have you thought about, have you noticed that you haven't been on time with paying? Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to like be more open to hearing their thoughts on it, but immediately my kids just assume I'm attacking them. So
We can't control.
I would like to ask,
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask what, what their perception of what does independence look like to you? And as you take some of those steps, and I respect that you want autonomy from us as your parents, but what does the full scope of that look like? Aside from living with us or having these agreements, what else demonstrates independence in your mind?
That's a great question, Marianne.
And responsibility. I don't always like independence because I think the goal is not to be just all by yourself, but interdependent.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so to be a responsible, successful adult.
That's a great question.
I think one of the reasons these conversations get very hard is because our kids are very smart. They know they're being called on the line, no matter how you put it. And so putting it better is better than not putting it well, but that is part of what's going on.
Absolutely, Dave. And our kids may very well, we could ask the most beautiful question in the world. Doesn't mean they're not going to be defensive, but we don't control their responses. We only have control over our own. So if we can stay calm and stay in that centered place where we just keep thinking, what's the better question? And I really like, Marianne, you're sort of asking about, you're getting at expectations there, right? Like it doesn't even have to be about the phone. You could just start a conversation, right? About what does it mean to you to be independent or responsible? And then you can say, because I've noticed, that I've noticed that you haven't paid your bill on time. Do you think that, anyway, I don't want to give any answers because I don't know any better than any of you. This is like a group project, but Marianne, I thought that was a great place to start. Other suggestions?
I think one.
Go ahead.
I think one, I'm not quite sure how to word it, but idea that comes to mind is kind of getting at whether their perception of on time, like if they think paying on time is even important, or because you maybe, like I would have this is the date you're supposed to pay, but to them it may be like, well, I paid within a few days and I didn't even recognize there was a problem. So trying to ask a question that sort of is at getting at that.
That gets at expectations, right? So you could ask about what their expectations are for this, and you could share some of yours. Absolutely. Melinda, what about you? What are you thinking?
Well, I was in a situation with my son where he had a lot of bills all due on the 1st. And he felt like he knew I didn't really need the money. So he paid his other bills first. So one question you might get with is, how's your financial planning going? Do you have a lot of responsibilities on the 1st or something like that?
So sneaking in the back door.
Well, no, I mean, generally asking about, how are your finances going in general?
Yeah.
Yeah, and generally, I mean, this is a boundary conversation. And, you know, you want to be able to set up some kind of an agreement or relationship where he has some accountability, you know, that he reaps what he sows, and recognizing that by helping him out, he's somewhat under an artificial sort of scenario for the time being. But being able to address the topic in just that, and you don't have to use these words, but that your boundary is being crossed when he's not choosing to make it a priority to pay. You know, possibly like the previous lady just mentioned, that if he has all of his bills due at the same time, as a compassionate landlord, you might be willing, if we have an open discussion, to allow him to pay it on the second week of the month, to give him a little bit of break. But that to make special arrangements in the future, he's going to have a conversation with that that person that he's in agreement with. So yeah.
Yeah, those are great thoughts. Yeah. I think Ruth, you had a comment?
Yes, I sure did. I noticed the word comes up often about chronically, you know, some kind of things that are happening chronically, and also about agreement with that. So maybe if we can agree to pay on the 5th or something like that, I think that, you know, maybe give them 5 days of grace period instead of, you know, without a fee. That maybe that's one way of opening up a kind of discussion and dialogue, instead of saying, oh, you're late all the time, or anything like that, you know, late paying me. Maybe that's one way that he can continue to be responsible and make his payments, you know, giving him an opportunity, you know, because if someone's chronically late, we need to try to find out why. And then we have to teach them that, you know, payment on time is important. And if you can't make the payment on time, then hey, let's talk about maybe a 5-day grace period or something like that, or even adding a fee if needed be, if you're going to be late.
Yep, those are great. Those are great solutions. Those are great. And there's no one right answer to these questions, right? But what I'm trying to get you to do is think about creative ways to get in that are a little more conversation engendering than sort of slams, right? And I can just share that my 24-year-old spent money, $800 on a television set when he owed us $2,000, and he said he was working to pay us back and we weren't saying anything. And I just came to the point, I just said, I was like enraged. But I went and processed with my husband. I said, I feel so resentful. And then he said, you need to talk to Cole about that. And so I went to Cole and I just said, I really don't like this feeling that I'm having. I don't want to have any resentment towards you, but I feel this and I just really don't like it. I wasn't attacking him. I was saying these feelings are really hard. I don't want resentment between you and me. And he apologized, you know, he owned it, but sometimes it's going to be messy, right? It's going to be messy, but knowing what we're feeling helps us act in a better way, and affirming what we can, and then coming up with creative questions. So we could talk about this one all day because money is a big one, right? So let's see if we can get
just one other little suggestion. One of the reasons we pay our bills on time is that most of them have a little fee attached. It may only be $3 or $4, but if that could be part of your agreement from the very beginning, or maybe if it has to be instituted later, then you don't nag them. You know, I think $3 or, you know, $2 or $3, I bet you your kids would pay on time to save it in most cases.
Thanks, Dave. The other thing, this is just a practical thing, is that if our goal is really to help our children mature, then being upfront with them initially, because if these arrangements are indefinite, like for the rest of your life, you can be on our family plan. We can always say, we're going to start this. We're going to try this for a year. And if it doesn't work for either of us, we should reevaluate. And at the end of that year, I say, it didn't really work for me because I felt like I had to chase you up for payments. It was not late. I don't want to be your banker. So it's time for you to get your own thing. I've terminated the contract of your number, but at the end of this month, that's what's going to happen. Please make arrangements, right? That's what a regular creditor would do, right? You'd be like, oh, you didn't pay, late fee, as Dave says, or, you get cut off. Janine, I don't think you can answer this here, but I did want to leave you with one question. What are you communicating to your daughter by acting in such a way that acting out of your belief that she is too fragile to?
Yeah, she knows. I think she feels I'm walking on eggshells, and it makes. I'm sure it makes her feel like she's handicapped or something. Like there's something wrong with her.
So we often do, when we're afraid to make our children unhappy, we're often projecting that we don't think they have what it takes to make it in the world. So anyway, that's a deeper discussion, but I just wanted to put that out there. Because I saw somebody else on the breakout session added a question that was very similar. So, okay, so the second one is, your daughter wants to bring a friend home for Thanksgiving, but you don't feel comfortable around this friend. You're not sure if she's a girlfriend or just a friend, but either way, you feel this young woman is a bad influence on your daughter, and that her presence affects the quality of the time you spend with your daughter. So first, let's start with the feelings. Let's help each other identify what we're feeling here.
I think for me, a feeling, I mean, I haven't actually had an exact situation like this, but I think it would, my deepest desire as a mother to my daughters is to connect with them. So if I have my daughter coming home with this girl who impacts the way that I'm connecting with my daughter, that's going to be a fear of disconnection with my daughter.
So you're fear of loss, right?
Yeah.
So you're sad, you're,
Fear of this girl taking my daughter away from me and being more important to my daughter than I am to her, maybe.
Okay,
Oh,
so
Laura,
that sounds like jealousy.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, is that jealousy too, Laura?
Maybe. I mean, obviously, I want my daughters to have really close friendships, but I want them to be friendships that point them to being the best version of themselves. I don't want my kids to be, I'm not one of those moms who wants my kids to say that I'm their best friend, but I want to connect with them. I want a relationship with them. And so if this girlfriend of hers is going to come in and change the dynamics of our relationship, that would feel like loss to me. It would be a hard thing.
Okay. Somebody else was talking. I couldn't see who was that.
I know, Laura, I relate so much to that. I can think of a time when our oldest daughter had a friend who wanted to come for Christmas, and it is somebody that doesn't fit in seamlessly with our family. And I think for me, it was also at that time where you're transitioning to your kids being your children, to them being adults, and you're losing control. It's changing. Like, they're still the center of my world, but I'm no longer the center of their world. So for me, I think it does trigger grief, and probably grief and some just feelings of like, who am I now, and who are my children? And it's unfamiliar when we're in that transition, at least for me. And Christmas doesn't look like it used to look, and we're not in control of where our kids choose to be their people anymore. And so it was that letting go of that control. I don't know if anybody else relates to that.
Thanks, Linda. And I'm sorry you got chopped off earlier. You froze, and so we lost you.
Yeah,
bit,
no,
but...
my internet crashed. I had to restart everything. So
okay.
All good.
All right.
I think there's almost a sense of violation. Like this is your house, and you picture your holidays a certain way. And when you know that there's going to be a component to that celebration that makes you uncomfortable, you feel like your sacred space of your home is being violated. But then it gets this second layer to it of, wanting to be a parent who welcomes your children's friends and has an open door policy and says, you know, if there's room for you, there's a couch, I'll give you a pillow. And so, you know, I think it's also a little bit of that frustration of, you know, wanting to maybe hide your true feelings about feeling violated because you want to be a welcoming parent. So it's like multi-layered.
Absolutely. Excellent. So conflicted, violated. I heard about grief and maybe some identity questions you said, Linda. Yeah, lots of feelings, right?
Yeah. You know, in our case, that friend died in March.
Oh.
And it's like, so I'm realizing, oh, I have regret too. Like that we didn't welcome them into our home, because had we, it would have spoken so much love to our daughter, and we would have gotten to know our daughter's friend and roommate so much better. And now we would be more part of her grief process. But we lost that opportunity because we set that boundary. So yeah, this is a really good question, Kristen. And Melanie, I like the way you expressed, yes, we have these feelings, and yet we want to be those people that say, yes, come everyone.
Yeah. So I just want to take a second to acknowledge how big our feelings are and how natural they are and how unavoidable they are, right? And they deserve their day. You know, they deserve our attention, and we have to give our feelings their due. That's a first step before we try to deal with these interpersonal conflicts, right? So let's move on to affirmation. What can we affirm about this situation?
I'm glad you have friends.
I'm glad that you have friends that you want to invite into our space.
Yeah.
That's really meaningful when my children have invited their friends here, even when it is kids that I don't necessarily want to have a negative influence on my kids, like that our home feels safe for them to bring their friends to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's beautiful that this daughter first of all, wants to be with her family on Thanksgiving, right? That's not a given for some kids. And not only that, wants to bring their friend into this circle. That's huge.
Really, I think it's like it's an honor, right? It's an honor that our kids want to reveal themselves enough to us that they would want to share their closest people with us. Really, it's a huge honor.
Absolutely. So given those feelings and the affirmations, what might be a question that would launch a conversation with your daughter?
I think it would be safe to say, you know, I think it's a safe place to say to your daughter, I'm not going to lie to you, this person sometimes rubs me the wrong way, and I do have some concerns. So what will you do to help create a comfortable environment for all of us during this stay? You know, what are some ideas that we can generate? What are some conversations we might want to have? What are some games you might think would be good games for us to play? You know, like invite the daughter into the conversation of what will this visit look like?
That's good. Yeah, expectations and involving her.
Mhm.
Is there, I love that question, Melanie. Is there a question we might ask before we got to that point?
I was thinking,
Real practical.
How do you think this having your friend here will change the dynamics of our family time together? Or do you envision it being any different having her here? Or, I mean, just trying to, before even saying how I feel about this person to her, just saying, have you thought about how it might change what it looks like for us as a family for this, you know, traditional time that we have together.
Mhm.
I guess I'd ask mine, why is her coming with you important?
Yeah, now you're backing up even further, right? So you're starting
Mhm.
way out. Exactly. Why is it important for you to bring her to this house?
And it's
even
all
with
in the way you say it, right? It's all in your tone when you're saying that, when you're asking the
Sure.
question.
Right? That genuine curiosity, that first turn to wonder, like, oh, why am I so triggered by this situation? So you know what your own feelings are. Then when you're in a more centered place, asking her, what does this girl mean to you? I mean, that to me, that's like the top level question, right? Like, what is this?
Right.
Like, you want to
Yeah.
understand this relationship. To you, it's a mystery. Like, what does she see in this girl? But she obviously does see something. So what does this relationship mean to you? What do you like about this girl? And what does it mean to you that you want to bring her home? I'm so interested that you want to bring her home. What does that mean to you? Those
It's
are great
hard. I was just going to say, it's hard for a parent whose kid has just come out, because I'm still at the phase, like I was telling my husband, oh my God, what if they kiss it? I've never seen Grace kiss a woman before, and I'm trying to just have this smile on my face and be all affirming, and inside I'm still trying to figure that one out. I'm already down the road. How am I going to be at her wedding and not, when I start crying tears, will they be tears of joy, or will she know that I'm sobbing for different reasons? So, there's a whole plethora of things that come to mind.
Which is why you need those safe peers to process with. Yeah.
Mhm.
Ruth, you had a comment or question?
Yeah, as far as the family goes and family friends and coming over, um, we've, in terms of the time of them being there, I guess I want to talk about that situation. If you want to bring them over, sure, that's fine. You want us to meet this person, or if you want us to meet them, that's great. But if you want to bring them over, that's a different situation, and have them stay. And so you know, teaching them the difference about like coming over for the holidays, and having them have excitement for bringing their friend over. I want to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. So Ruth, thanks so much. That sounds like you're explaining to your daughter that you have certain feelings about holidays having certain boundaries as opposed to other times, which is absolutely appropriate for you to share with your daughter, but it's not a question. It's not a starting place. That's you sort of like being more instructive, which I totally get. And you might get there, right? When it's your turn to sort of share your feelings. But I'm really trying to look at the very entry point that will facilitate a better kinds of conversation. And that's why I'm trying to back way up with these really curious questions initially, right? Who is this girl to you? What do you love? Clearly you care about her if you want to bring her home. What is it about her? What is Thanksgiving? Or you could ask a totally generic question like, what do you love about Thanksgiving at our home? You can start way out there. Oh, you love that? Oh, why is it important for you to share it with this friend? Just sort of trying to learn about your daughter. Not so much like lead to a certain outcome, but more learn about your daughter. Does that make sense?
I love these questions. It's just, again and again, I'm brought back to thinking this is centering our children rather than ourselves. It's like we're putting the focus on them rather than it being this narcissistic view of it's about me, how I feel. And I just think for me, my own parents don't do that. Everything is about them as they're aging. And I'm trying to change that so that when I'm aging, it's about my kids. I don't expect it to all be about me. So I really appreciate all your guys, what you're bringing up, because it's like, oh, it's all about the kids. We're centering their feelings, their desires, because I'm the parent and I have that to give to them.
Yes, but I want to say one caveat, Linda, because
Okay.
absolutely, like you have to take into account like the maturity level, right? And you are, as parents, we absorb these things. But part of modeling adulthood to them is also you being clear about your boundaries. Like
Yeah.
you know, I really hear you. And in the end, the outcome of this situation might be like, I hear that it is really important to you.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable with this situation. Like her behavior the last time she was here really gave me a bad Thanksgiving. It was really painful for me, you know, like that might be. And you have every right to do that. So that's why I'm saying these are not prescriptive. And
Well, it's a balance. It's a balance.
Absolutely. And then as your child is more and more mature, you can eventually be more of a peer, you know? But at these touch and go times, when you're trying to build that and you're trying to help your kids grow up, I mean, they have to know how you feel. This is not about hiding yourself. This is about, you know, unity across deep difference, right? This isn't about homogenization or like one person taking all the blows and one person getting all the ways. In fact, part of showing our kids that we have respect for how they're growing is being real, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or, ooh, that hurt. Ugh.
Mm.
You know, so I'm not advocating for squelching yourself. And you know, modern American culture, we're used to centering the kids. So it's more like, you know, and when your kids are babies, right? My therapist says, when your kids are babies, like, this is it, you're holding them, right? And as they start to grow up, it's more like this, you know, you're sort of helping them a little bit. And then eventually it's like this, but it's a process. And these things have to happen in a developmental. Melinda, you're a teacher, Waldorf, Montessori teacher. So, right. So that's all about like helping your children on this developmental journey. And your kid might be 25 or 30 and have never made those developmental things. So you have to deal with not the chronological age, but the actual relational, or I don't know what the right phrase is there, Melinda, you can help me out, but the internal age of your kid. And sometimes, like, I have friends who have brought in young adults into their home who are traumatized, and their emotional age is 2 or 6. And those adults have to, we have 10 minutes. Thanks, Nathaniel. Those adults have to be brought through those developmental stages to eventually become the adult that they can be. So that's why this is not prescriptive. It really depends. You know your kid. And is that helpful at all? Okay, I just wanted to make sure, Ruth, I saw you speaking with the interpreter, and I just wanted to make sure, was there something else you wanted to say there, or were you just having a clarification with him?
Yeah, we were talking about the setting up that time with the family to talk about bringing friends over progressively, or whether it was a good time to bring friends or not, and which time of the year, like, is a holiday time a good time to bring in a friend, or just starting up that discussion of like appropriate occasions for when to have family over, and that how those conversations and those boundary settings have to happen prior to the event itself, whether it's appropriate to bring a friend or whatnot for a family holiday versus another time of the year.
Yeah, that's a great point. Again, preparation, right? Not in the heat of the moment. And, appropriate for one person is different for another person, right? Like, some families are all like, hey, bring all your friends. And other families are very circle the wagons. No, this is precious, sacred time, which is so, right? You have to talk about that. One thing at the holidays, just before we move on, that I have found super helpful is about 3 weeks before when I'm organized, I send everybody an email and I say, what is the 1 or 2 things without which this will not be Christmas for you? Like, what are the 1 or 2 things that you'd have to happen? And oh my gosh, I learned so much from my kids. Like, my oldest, he was like, we have to watch It's a Wonderful Life. And I was like, oh, that's important to you. So then I just make sure that everybody, if I'm hosting, right, gets at least one thing on their list. And the problem is most people don't even know they have expectations. Or maybe I shouldn't say most people. I didn't know that I often don't know that I have expectations until they're disappointed. Then the event's over and I'm like, why do I feel so sad and irritated and cranky? Oh, because I didn't get this, that, or that. Did you tell anybody that you wanted those things? No. Well then, so just that communication, that preparation is huge. I will share my PowerPoint slides with you guys. In fact, on my last slide, I have my email address. And if you email me, I will send you all of the graphics, and because there's a couple of helpful things about dialogue in general and specifically this. So should we try one more, or do you want to just have like open, should we do one more scenario? Oh, Tanya?
A lot of these seem like adult kids, and I have teenagers. So do these rules like change for teenagers? Because like, especially with a 13-year-old, I feel like I have more, I don't know, it just seems like it'd be a different dynamic than an adult kid.
Well, I'm gonna ask you not to call them rules, because I think they're general principles.
Okay, well,
right?
yeah, sorry.
But I hear you. And yeah, I think our responsibility to our teenagers is different from our responsibilities to our young adult kids. But it's a continuum, right? It starts, when they start exerting their own independence, and it continues on. So I think they can be tweaked. The last scenario I have is about political differences, and I think that applies to kids of all ages. So maybe we'll just look at that one quickly before we close, and then maybe you can share some of your concerns with that one, Tanya. Maybe we'll start with
Okay.
with you on that one. So let me see, share screen. So the last one, there we go. Your child holds a very different political persuasion from yours. They're very vocal about their position on social media, during family gatherings, etc. You feel they are deeply misled, and their conversations about it tend to upset you. So again, what feelings does this engender in you? Tanya, can you relate to this at all, or no? Okay. Maybe, is there anything that you could sort of transcribe, even if it's not political views, faith views, or?
Yeah, I guess like my daughter's left the faith because of how the church has treated her. So
that's hard.
Yeah.
So what feelings does that engender in you, Tanya?
About her leaving the church, the faith, or
Mm-hmm.
a lot of anger. These people were like our best friends for many years, and they absolutely destroyed my daughter's self-esteem. They destroyed her faith in God. She, no longer believes. She was suicidal. Just a ton of anger.
And grief.
And grief. And yeah, and it's like, and then there's like division in our marriage because my husband, we're both fully affirming of our child. So that's, that's not an issue, which is great. But he wants to work it out with the church, whereas I just want to get to a safe, affirming church. So it's like, how do we as a family move forward?
That's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you. Yeah. Thanks. Dave, I think maybe he was saying goodbye because I think he's gone now. So your feelings are complicated. They're sort of more about the outsiders. What about our feelings towards our children when they have just very, very different value systems than we do, and they're very vocal about them? Like what feelings might that engender?
Well, again, I have two. I have indignation, and I also have sadness. And I don't have this issue with my children right now, but certainly, having recently come out of an evangelical setting, a lot of the people that I'm friends with on Facebook, this week has been a difficult week because I've seen some things that I completely don't agree with. And so there's this sense of you want to set them right, and a real sense of sadness. And I do know I'm probably jumping ahead again. I'm sorry. I do some part-time work as a home senior care person. And in one of the homes that I worked in recently, she has a sign up on her wall that says, "I do not wish to discuss politics. Please refrain from speaking about that in my house."
Okay.
I know my mother-in-law, had we been able to have Christmas, which we weren't able to do, but had we been able to do something for Christmas as a whole family, there are opposing views within extended family. And she was planning just to announce beforehand that at her table for Christmas, there would be no political talk. So it's not addressing the issue at that time. It's deflecting the issue. There's still the issue. But
That's
I
not
do think,
dialogue.
yeah, but I do think that there is a time and a place. And so if it's your own home, you can set when and where and how that happens.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. I tried to put
that's
my
okay.
I tried to put my email in the bar and here in the chat bar, but I made a mistake. So it's kkomarnith@eastern.edu. Eastern.edu. It's there. We're out of time. I'm so sorry. We're not going to be able to go any further on that last one. I'm going to put this song on so we can listen to it going out, and then please email me. I'd love to hear from any of you and share all of the documents. I hope it was helpful. Thanks so much for brainstorming.
Thank you.
Kristen, before you go, will you post your email address again? It came back to me as a direct message rather than in the group.
Oh, all right. So I just really, hold on.
Yeah, I want to make sure everyone.
Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry. I have to send it to everybody. Nathaniel, don't cut us off. Nathaniel, are you there?
I'm here.
Can you give us a couple extra seconds to?
You're totally fine.
Oh, okay. I thought it might be like on an automated, they're just going to chop us off.
Okay, now we got it. kkomarny@eastern.edu.
That's me. Sorry. 3 times the charm.
That's
right.
funny. I'm mvadzemny@gannon.edu. Can't get my whole name in there either.
Oh, yeah. That's the way it is. All right. I'm going to share my screen. And then this is the, gotta put this on here. Play this.
Your children are not your children. They are the sons and the daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but they are not from you. And though they are with you, they belong not to you. You can give them your love, but not your thoughts. For they have their own thoughts. They have their own thoughts. You can house their bodies, but not their souls. For their souls dwell in a place of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You can strive to be like them, but you cannot make them just like you. Strive to be like them, but you cannot make them just like you. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and the daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but they are not from you. And though they are with you, they belong not to you. You can give them your love, but not your thoughts. For they have their own thoughts. They have their own thoughts.
I'll stop it there. There's a link to the song in the slides too. So thanks so much, parents. You're doing the best you can. We are all doing the best we can, and we need each other. So hang in there and let's do it together. Bye, everybody.